And the combat is like, man, shallow is too kind a word. The lack of enemy variety, the sponginess of those enemies, how limited your control over party members is, it all makes combat so utterly mindless and so breathtakingly repetitive. Let me put it this way. I spoke to 2 other reviewers who both ended up lowering the difficulty to the easiest setting, not because it was hard, but because it was just so drawn out and so boring.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Hey, so you know how when you're trying to give your fair and honest opinion of a game, so you turn the difficulty all the way down to get through it as quickly as possible, and then you called the game shallow because you decided to play it on the easiest difficulty? Yeah, me neither. Disclaimer, all of the Velguard footage on my channel has the enemy held at max, just for a reference for how spongy the enemies actually are. I actually turned this up because it was a bit too easy to start off. Skillip has shown on multiple occasions that he's a fairly incompetent gamer. And that's totally okay. That's what difficulty options are for. But he tends to blame the game whenever something doesn't click with him. You can see it here with Velguard.
Characters do not look like real people. They look like Pixar or DreamWorks characters. You think I'm exaggerating? This is Prince Charming from Shrek.
He doesn't like the way that his character looks. He clearly didn't take the time to make a character that he was happy with. And that's fine. But again, he blames the game. He even does it here with Anthem.
What the fuck am I supposed to do here? There's no cover. I have to tank every bit of damage coming at me because there is literally nothing else that I can do. I really could not believe this when I saw it.
His reviews always include lengthy, high-level discussions about the writing, but he's showing you that he doesn't understand simple concepts while also selling you on the idea that he's well acquainted with complex concepts. I don't think that a guy that wouldn't be able to grasp flying in a game that's about flying would be able to accurately sum up the entirety of a game's writing. The plot, the dialogue, the cutscenes, the banter, basically everything, in just a few sentences. I don't care how vast his vocabulary is. But he sure does talk good.
It was always so interesting to take part in dialogue in Mass Effect or KOTOR or Dragon Age Origins. Here, it's just so boring as one-dimensional characters bombard you with meaningless anecdotes that you know have no impact on your experience whatsoever. The writing is frankly terminal. It lacks any nuance or wit or wisdom.
What do you mean by that?
It cannot communicate ideas except to say them aloud to the camera. It manufactures petty, unbelievable tension because it doesn't know how to create anything more real. The writing too is almost terminally wounded by uncompromising focus on structure over storytelling. The first 2/3 of this game, it honestly feels like there's almost no storyline at all, since the non-linear structure doesn't allow plot events and character interactions to be built sequentially. It only comes together in the final third when the game starts being a linear experience, and at that point, it's fantastic.
Bad writing is something that is often said because it's easy to say and hard to counter. But these are video games, not books. So when you're talking about the writing, is it just the words that the characters are saying? Is it how they are being said? Is it the plot? Is it the pacing? It's like criticizing a song because the music is bad. Is the song too quiet? Too loud? Do you not like the instruments that are being used? Is the quality of the audio poor? Do you like the lyrics but not the way that they're being sung? The music is bad is an insufficient criticism, and if you take any one of those things, it's really not enough of a criticism to say that the entirety of the song is bad. When Skillip criticizes something that's easy to quantify, you can easily catch him in 4K being dead wrong. But when he says something like, the dialogue lacks wisdom, it's hard not to just take it at face value. You probably didn't even notice that I switched the audio on the previous clips. The way he talks about writing is so vague and non-descriptive that it could be used for any game when he wants to say, game bad. I'm not saying that Skillip is a bad reviewer overall, but when he tells me that he isn't being thorough and is clearly glossing over the best part of a game, the combat, I question how applicable his opinion is. And I definitely weigh it a lot lower than someone like Mortismal, who 100%s every game that he reviews. Skill Up isn't the problem. The problem is you, the viewer, that takes in the information that he gives you non-critically and regurgitates it across the internet. He agrees with me on this, by the way.
Some of the more negative reviews got way too much play in that discussion. And obviously mine was one of those reviews that I think was really disproportionately referenced, because it's just like, it's just one review, you know what I mean? It's just like one opinion, and there's no reason that my opinion should be any more valuable than anybody else's or talked about anybody else's, when there's
people will have incredibly strong opinions after reading or listening to a review about a game that they didn't play yet. You know, and it's not me like saying, well, you didn't play it. It physically is not available to be played yet. So
in my opinion, writing is something that can only really be scrutinized or appreciated in moments. When people criticize writing, they'll condemn the entire project and then show you a handful of out-of-context clips. Showing me half of 10 lines of dialogue really isn't sufficient to condemn an entire body of work. Let me give you some of my personal examples of reasonable writing critique. I don't like any of the romance stuff. I think it's incredibly irrelevant and out of place when the stakes are so high, and it eats up a lot of the runtime. Also, fuck the immortal. The pacing is terrible. They tried to introduce like 25 characters in like a normal length movie, and then do the whole rest of the plot after that. It was like 60% exposition. It was stressful to watch. See how that tells you exactly what my problem is without condemning the whole project? Compare that to the dialogue lacks wisdom. You know what my favorite line of dialogue is? This line from the first Dragon's Dogma.
It is a simple proposition, no different than any you've faced. You need only the will to claim what is offered you. The will to survive.
I kid you not, this is the only line of video game dialogue that I can readily remember off the top of my head. And it comes from a game with a plot that's difficult to describe, let alone appreciate. That nugget of gold stuck with me, even though the story that it was buried in is largely forgettable. And the combat in that game is incredible, so it's a win-win for me. But if Skill Up had reviewed it, he'd probably just say that the dialogue lacks wisdom.
What do you mean by that?
I personally think that if a game does anything well, it's worth trying. I'm not saying that you have to like it or go and spend your money on it, but you shouldn't be mentally closed to experiencing it. You might miss out on your very own nugget of gold. Well, that's all I wanted to say. I've had this bone to pick for quite some time, if you couldn't tell. If any of that resonated with you, let's talk about it in the comments. Thanks for watching.